In the immortal words of Theodore Roosevelt, no man is above the law and no man is below it. Nor do we ask any man's permission when we ask him to obey it. Obedience of law is demanded as a right, not as a favor. With this, we request our eminent guest of the day, Mr. Nishith Desai, to address the gathering on the topic of 4th lecture session of Foundation Day Celebration Lecture Series, Expectation of Legal Industry from Law Students. Please, sir.
Thank you. Can I say Purvi Ben, Amubai, and all my friends here. First of all, let me congratulate you all for having this extraordinary facility here in terms of campus. And Mumbai, really thank you so much for providing such a great environment to the students here. In my talk today, I would also talk to you in my capacity as a student. In some ways, I would say, Amubai, I am also an alumni. And let me tell you how. When we all grew up, who taught us? People like Kasanbhai, Ambubai, who took the largest corporations of the world head on and established something like Nirma. We are all very proud of that. Congratulations. And why I'm a student? Because I learned my lessons of entrepreneurship from Nirma. It gave us a lot of confidence to do things in India and around the world without any fear and with a lot of confidence. Just before we met here, I was telling a story about a firm. I studied over 100 law firms of the world during 1985 to 1989. Topmost law firms I studied, their organizational behavior, how they are structured, they are organized and stuff like that. And around the same time, this case studies on Nirma was happening, okay? And we thought we can do something better than anyone else in the world. If you know, when you start anything new, usually you end up doing some kind of benchmarking, right? There are leaders, individual leaders, there are institutional leaders, there are corporate leaders. So you always benchmark. And what one of my close friends who passed away, Mr. C.K. Prahlad, told me was, you take best practices from others. You take best things from others. You have to learn. We are always a learning organization, learning individual. You have to learn from others. But what do you do next? You take best practices, but you then provide next practices to those who provide you the best practices. So when I studied all those over 100 law firms, all the accounting firms, inside, outside, I know, consulting firms like McKinsey and other ones, learned a lot. So before setting out to set up my own law firm, I did a lot of intensive study. It was not overnight kind of thing. And in the process, what has happened is that our firm has become a benchmark firm for foreign law firms today. Not that I'm taking in, I can take a little pride on that, but do not consider I'm an arrogant. There's a difference between taking pride and being an arrogant. So take it to the pinch of salt. Our firm was taken up as a showcase firm at International Bar Association year before last in Vancouver, last year in Dubai. And there is a lot of curiosity as to how one little Indian law firm is setting new benchmarks for the global law firms. Okay, and thanks once again to you. So it has also become a case study in US management schools now. John Wiley, which is the most renowned publishers of journals on organizational excellence, has now published a study on us. I spoke to over 75 managing partners of the US law firms. Spoke to about 60, 70 managing partners of Eastern European law firms, you know. So the point I'm driving at is to tell you that you can do anything that you want to, if you pursue with passion and with fair degree of honesty. Nothing can beat you. Okay, nothing can beat you. And all that you need to do is to think little systematically, think creatively, and be a little disciplined. I'm just telling you approach before I get into the expectations and other thing. I think first you have to see your expectations as well, you know, before meeting others' expectations. So be yourself. If you are yourself, you know, you will get something which can never be valued in terms of money, and that is what I call, quote unquote, happiness. You know, so happiness quotient is the most important part of anything you do. You know. And the approach, just to share you the way in which I'm just sharing some of the experiences, so I'm not necessarily teaching you. As a law firm and as myself, we took was twofold. One, management, and number two, technical skills or technology. If you combine management, technical skills, and technology together, you can be at least 3 times more powerful than anybody else. Number one. Number two, if you start on something, take a global view. Look at whole world. Don't just be siloed with India or some particular geography or in particular area of practice. Don't make up your mind too fast. This is one thing which I would strongly recommend. And I know in the last decade or two, there was a lot of demand for corporate lawyers, right? Everyone wants to be, at least 60-70% of people want to do corporate. In the process, what has happened? There are so many top rankings students. They are sitting on a bench today because capital markets is dead. There is just no work. And they don't know anything else except capital markets. Now, on the one hand, people think, oh, capital market, currently it's a big issue. They become quasi-redundant. So keep your mind open, learn from everywhere, stay informed. At the same time, don't be too much taken over by external factors. Be yourself, because ultimate object of all that you do, and particularly in the profession, is your intellectual quotient, happiness quotient. If you want to make money, there are a number of other opportunities, number of other things you can do. But if once you're in profession, then it's slightly different. Than nothing wrong with anything that you do in life, but once you're chosen to be in the legal profession, it's important that you think like a professional. Now, just tell me one, I'll ask, I think, I don't want to bore you with so many things. Is MBA a profession? How many of you think? Is MBA a profession? Or no? Anyone can? Okay. Now, if you look at Harvard Business Review some time ago, entire issue is devoted to one single question, and that is whether MBA is a profession. And the dean of Harvard Business School, Nitin Nehoria, he said MBA is not a profession because there is no binding code of conduct. Entire issue is on that, and coming from the best business school in the world, right? Not that they don't think, but there is no binding code of conduct. So what happens, somebody could be MBA from X and somebody can be from Y, and anybody can call MBA. The major difference between profession and a business is that in profession, service comes first, intellectual quotient comes first, money comes second. Not that there are any absolutes, and I'm not even downgrading any other thing, but I'm saying once you have chosen to be a professional, you have to really think like a professional. And that is where a lot of difference you can make. Second, coming to specific areas of practice, because you have expectations of legal industry from law students. Now I would say expectations of legal profession. We are industrious, no doubt about it, but I think we are in profession. So what are the challenges? What do you get? You got thousands of students coming out of colleges and universities. How do you provide them that professional opportunity? Now, one is the external side of the game, as I mentioned. You look at and say, okay, we provide this opportunity. These are the kind of things that you can do. But second, more opportunities will come from within. If you keep your mind open and try to learn more than what you are just ordinarily required to learn. Okay. Legal profession provides so many different opportunities, but we are blinded by glamour. Again, that's what is my experience, because today, like, we do mergers, acquisitions, and somewhere along the line. So a lot of people think that some other subjects are not that great, not that glamorous. But remember one principle, that every non-glamorous area can become glamorous someday. At one point of time, I remember, like, employment law, labor lawyers used to be called, because there were so many strikes and lockouts. So they were most important people in the society in 60s and 70s, okay? Nobody looked too much at tax and stuff like that, but this was, Then everybody started looking at, as you know, in last few years, corporate. People started looking at tax. Suddenly when Vodafone came and people began to see that, in tax people are making a lot of money, so everybody wants to go into that. But there are cycles, just remember that. Same thing has happened otherwise outside too. Look at one point of time, in 50s, 60s, everybody wanted to become engineer. There are so many engineers that, jobs are not enough. Then everybody wants to become medical doctor, Too many doctors. Then came chartered accountants. Last 20, 30 years, nobody wants to do arts, okay? So what has happened is that these are cycles. Now there are too many chartered accountants, okay? No chartered accountant, by and large, wants to practice law, practice accountancy. Everybody wants to practice law, tax law, right? So you qualify to become accountant, okay? But you don't want to practice accountancy, but you want to do something else. So all these are cycles, and you have to look into what are the cycles coming up. As I mentioned, some years ago, capital market lawyers were in great demand. So everybody said, we'll become capital market lawyer, and then some mergers and acquisition. Okay, and then something else. So if you just pause for a moment and look at what is of interest to you, your aptitude will drive your attitude, or attitude will drive your altitude, as they say. So attitude should be to keep your mind. I was, when I did my master's, when I did my law, I was interested in employment, labor law. But some people say fortunately or otherwise, or I found no senior to work with. So whatever came my way, I took it up. Tax was complete. I said, it's not my subject. It's accountant subject. If you ask me today, total of these 10 items, I'll do 10 times, yet be wrong. Okay. So, but somehow or the other, in tax profession, it just worked out. So, you know, I had my mind open to do anything. And as time changes, you should be able to shift your gear and drive your own vehicle the way in which you want to. Because there are external factors, there are internal factors, personal situations and otherwise. So you cannot put whole thing in one silo, that only this is the way and this is the only kind of. There is a principle in a company called Google that when you do something, most of the time you spend on some area of practice or otherwise. So 60-70% of time you should spend on your core competency. 20-30% of time on something that is linked to your core competency. And 10% completely different. It may be unrelated. Okay, for example, I was talking to Professor Dave just when I was coming. He's teaching human rights law, right? Today, hardly 10% students would have real interest in human rights, you know. But if you think far, in next 10 years, maybe you will see specialization, integrating human rights into corporates will become a major area of specialty. Okay? Because if you are going to look at only traditional way, because you cannot drive your future only looking at the past. Past is only to learn lessons, you know. You can never, you only have to devise your own future. So when you look at next 8-10 years, what is going to be the single biggest risk on a company? Can somebody tell me? Is corporate compliance? Is something else? Single biggest risk which will threaten most companies will be the responsibility of not only corporate, social responsibility, but responsible organizations. It is going to create a lot of new issues. For example, if you are a company, right, doing a big business. Now, you purchase your vendors. If vendors are using child labor, in China, prison labor was common, right? You know, there will be audit whether are those companies compliant. So you cannot do business with those companies which do not respect human rights. And there will be ISO 27000 now that is coming up. Okay. Now, question is, I personally feel that this is one of the areas which will become an important area in next 7 to 10 years. As companies mature, they think differently. You know, environment already you know it was, and it is becoming an important subject. But what is called responsible organization is going to look at lot more outside profit and loss account. Valuations of the companies, there have been number of studies done, depend on how well a company is governed, right? You talk about corporate governance. So corporate governance and valuation of a company have direct correlation. But when you look at the further value addition is going to be in those companies which are responsible organizations. So responsibility don't just equate with corporate social responsibility. Responsibility is a whole corporate responsibility. So a responsible organization will believe in do no harm. There are, so everything that you do, constantly you keep a watch as to human rights are violated, environment things are, or any other kind of thing. So you have to really look at and say in 7 to 10 years, one of the specialization could be how to integrate human rights into corporate behavior. Because organizational behavior is a subject in management by itself, and that can drive your valuation. So when people will look at, oh, how come this company is commanding so much valuation? Then you will begin to find, no, profit and loss is not so much, but valuation is very high. Because the society, the consumers, the market really values the intangibles. And intangibles also include the behavioral part of the organization. So when you look at the entire ecosystem, you will find a lot of interesting subjects where you can begin to focus. So you can divide your future into 2 or 3 parts. One short term, medium term and long term. In short term, you have to survive, you have to earn your bread and butter and stuff like that, but the jam comes over a period of 7, 10, 12, 15 years. But if you know that after 7 years, these are 1 or 2 or 3 areas which will become important areas, then you begin to prepare from now. So in the meanwhile, you do whatever you need to do for survival purposes, but you have an eye on those 2 or 3 things. So if you want to change something quickly, when suddenly times change, as I mentioned, and really I receive so many applications from capital market lawyers, but there is no market today. So suddenly how do you handle the cycles? If you know something else, you'll be able to do something. So this is broadly as far as how to think and how to go about, and I'm always willing to share ideas and thoughts. Coming back to the expectations of legal industry, I think as I mentioned, I like to call more legal profession. First expectation is that you must be a good professional. If you are a good professional, you will never starve. You may make extraordinary money or not is a subject matter very different, but you will not starve if you are an honest professional. The crooked or the most hard kind of a criminal would still expect, most dishonest person, would still expect his lawyer to be honest to him. Okay? And what commands premium? What is in short supply, right? So if honesty is in short supply, people will trust you and they would be willing to pay you any money. But how can it happen? Only when you become trusted advisor to a client. Almost every organization and professional will say, oh, we want to be trusted advisor. But what does that mean? Trusted advisor means when you put client's interest above your interest, without losing your independence, without losing your integrity. Okay? Because in profession, what clients expect us is to be not yes men. They would like to have hard answers also. You cannot give opinion of convenience because client would be feeling happy, Because in short run he will be happy, but long run he will be unhappy and So you have to become trusted advisor. Once you are a trusted advisor, client will rely on you for almost every advice, whether it is law, whether it is business, because you become ultimately a friend, philosopher and guide. Okay. So, as I mentioned, that you have to learn, one, to develop some kind of speciality or a focus. Learn a lot of other things. At Harvard Business School, they have a system, what they call inverted T. Inverted T, like. That means you must have 1 or 2 specialized or some focused areas of practice, but you must have lateral knowledge of other subjects. For example, somebody will say, I'm a tax lawyer. There's nothing like tax lawyer. Maybe I know tax a little bit. But I have to be a good corporate lawyer. I have to be a good trust lawyer. I have to be a very good contract lawyer. Now tax and human rights are getting connected. Okay, in Europe there are quite a few papers written. Okay. So you will find that there are a number of things. You need to understand different industries, for example. Because just knowing law is not enough. You also need to know industry. So there are a number of industry-specific regulations that are coming up. So if you see how many new industries are coming up, every one can create an opportunity for you. So when you look at any particular law, try to apply that in the context of a particular industry. That will be very helpful. So if you're looking at, say, environmental law, right? Then in the context of mining, in the context of chemicals, in the context of something else. So when you combine industry knowledge along with what you call the basic skill set, the law, that will help. If I'm a tax lawyer, yes, one is general tax, but taxation of hotel industry, taxation of shipping, aircraft, outer space. There are n number of industries where you can focus. That is how you find niches. Okay. When I look at some or the other, what seems to have happened is that I have enjoyed doing some of these exercises, and I love to find newer areas of practice all the time. Okay, although I started with, tax and stuff like that, but over a period of time, I developed some kind of formula, not exact. I don't like to call it formula because it's very standard, but approach was that every new technology, every new financial instrument, every new business model brings along with it a new legal or tax problem. Look at, as I told you, I studied over 100 law firms, and of course I continue to study a number of them, even more. Now, what I realized at that point of time when I set up law firm, right? I was solo, single, nothing much. And there were 100-year-old law firms, 200-year law firms. And they are very nice professionals. They were all good benchmark for us. We learned so much from them. But when I thought they were focused, they could look back with a pride and say, oh, we've got 100-year history, and which is rightly so because they've done a great job. So I said, what do I do? Where do I go? Exactly in the position in which some of you may be. I had no direction. I had no other clue as to what I'm going to do, but only philosophy. Was that okay? They have a role to play, we have a role to play. I'm a new kid on the block. So if they can look back with a pride and say, we've done this great job, 100 years, which I don't have passed because I'm not that old anyway. But I said, okay, let me look at future 100 years. Okay. So then we are both complementary. So we complement the existing law firms and we contribute something, 1 cent value or whatever you call it. Okay. And that is how I started looking at the future, because that is where I can create a niche. You have to get away from the regular things. You may do some of those. I'm not suggesting for a moment don't do it. But think futuristic a bit. You will find whole world is open to you. And therefore the approach came up, and I just mentioned to you, was a research-based approach. Today almost 35 to 40% of our time we spend on research, academics, and thought leadership. And what was the philosophy? Every new technology, every new financial model, every new trend that comes up brings along with it a new legal or tax problem. Look at e-commerce, how many legal and tax problems? Correct? Wi-Fi, WiMAX, quantum computing, fuel cells, nanotechnology, clinical trials. How many new things are happening? How can you say you have no opportunity in this field? Law provides you enormous amount of opportunity, but if you move away from your shepherd mentality, you will find opportunity for yourself. So, think slightly out of the box. That will really help. Like cloud computing, I was just telling, 3.5, 4 years ago, we thought cloud is going to become an important part. So we sat down, we studied, the space, private cloud, public cloud, privacy issues, security issues, tax issues. Every new technology brings a new issue. For example, in 10 years' time, there will be remote surgery. So a doctor in Houston is going, or let's say in India, okay, vice versa, whatever we would do. He will sit in Houston and operate on an Indian patient through robotics. He will not have to visit India. He can scan the whole body while sitting in a Houston hospital. And with robotics, he can move his cursor and he can operate. And using nanotechnology, what you call nanorobots, what's going to happen? It will be non-invasive surgery. So you gulp a capsule with a nanorobot. You don't have invasive surgery. And he will operate because he will move. That robot will go and remove that part and flush out. Okay, this is new technology coming up. Think, what will be legal problems? Would that medical surgeon be permitted to practice surgery in India? Or is he performing surgery in India or is he performing surgery in the US or vice versa, whichever you take? Correct? So it's a legal problem. Why don't you think about it? What will be new issues in remote surgery? When surgery is carried out and patient dies, where will you file lawsuit? Correct? Not an opportunity, it's an opportunity. Okay. Whether it succeeds or not, the patient will have to pay fees. So at last, taxman always comes. So if you want to remit any money, say withholding tax on fees to be paid to that doctor or a hospital, you deduct tax at source. Now you'll say, oh, what will happen? Can you think 5-10 years ahead of time and prepare yourself today? If I would just continue to do only normal legal or tax work, I will be only confined to that. But constantly I must look to the future. Of course, you have to live in present. But at the same time, keep on looking at this kind of, and these specializations really are also very rewarding. Okay, even economically rewarding. Because once you develop a niche, okay, what happens is there are very few people who have done that. So you create some kind of nano monopoly, I would call. You know, C.K. Prahlad, I'm sure some of you heard. He is my very close friend. I used to go to San Diego and he wanted to also do a study on the firm. And he taught me one lesson. Forget about mega monopolies and big, you know, conglomerates and other things. The time is going to be for nano. So focus on micro monopolies. That means take one nice area, go deep into that, relate with that industry, understand everything around that, and you will develop such a good specialization. Each one of you here, 1,000 people, you can develop 1,000 different specializations. The field is so enormous, and there are spaces within a space. So as I was mentioning, that what we typically do is to do trend assessment and forecasting. Okay, what are the new trends that are going to come up over a period of next 3, 5, 7 years, 10 years? Out of those 100 trends, you shortlist 5, 10 because you can't do everything. You have to leave something else for somebody else also. You know. So we shortlist those trends, 8, 10 trends, which we think will make us happy, first of all, not because it will bring money. Okay. Number 2, once you have identified those spaces, you do what you call capsule research. Okay. We follow McKinsey way in many ways. Capsule research, it means, you know, the way in which you work around this kind of approach is that you don't start putting all resources day one. You identify 10 trends, broad trends, then do quick research, scan through important information, get little feel for what opportunities or what challenges are there in that particular space, and then begin to see that, is that something which is interesting or not. So you do broad, you need to find your own bearings. You're at a sea, you need to find some bearings so you can reach your destination. It may not be exact, but it will drive you somewhere in the right direction. Okay, as they say, if you want to cross the ocean, what you need to look at is a star, right? You will never reach star, but that gives you guidance and direction to go in the right place, right? Same way, when you look at number of different development, first question think, is there any legal or tax problem likely to come? Because we are in this profession, I'm just talking. And then try to scan, understand that industry, understand that particular, business. That will allow you to, get a feel. So once you get some idea about that, you don't spend too much of time because otherwise you'll be lost. So until such time you find some bearings which gives you some direction, then you go into further detail. So at a first level, you need to scan through overall and get a little feel of those things. And so once these trends are identified, some sense comes, go and talk to people that I think this is going to happen in next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. What do you think? So what we do, we go to and talk to business people like yourself or other consultants, that this is what are the trends, and we think this is going to happen in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. Now, for example, nanotechnology. Okay. When we started working on it about 5-6 years ago, we thought in next 4 or 5 years, nano will become very prominent, like .com. Suddenly it came, nobody knew what to do with that. We were prepared in 1991 for 2000. That's how we did so much of work on that particular space. We could take companies like Infosys on NASDAQ listing, we could take in Wipro, New York Stock Exchange, we could do all the work in Silicon Valley. We got more clients out of US than in India then, because we were already understanding. We had engineers turn lawyers, we identified engineers and made them lawyers. So, we had so suddenly what happened, that before we expanded anywhere else in India from Mumbai, first office we had to set up in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley. So everybody was surprised that how come you're not going anywhere else, okay, and you're going to Silicon Valley. But because you understood technology so well, it made a lot of difference in terms of giving proper advice. So what you need to do is that once you have done little bit of scanning, little bit of direction you got, then go and talk to people. Unless you go on the ground and talk to your clients, you will learn more from your clients. Of course, you will again teach them back the same thing and charge for that they don't mind. But, you can go and talk to people and they will tell you a lot. So if you look at nanotechnology, and we thought it will happen in 5 years, some people said it will take 7 years, 10 years. And we really realized it will take 7 to 10 years. Now what happens, we are not a huge firm, but for last 7-8 years, we have been focusing on that area. So by today, we have developed reasonable degree of insight without wasting or, suddenly putting all resources, and because when you develop practice, you have to also look at economics of the work as well. You can't put all resources, money, and these are expensive exercises in terms of research. So what do you do? We said, okay, it takes 7 years. Now we've got 7 years time to spread our research. You can do all the work. You can take 5% of the time in a month to study nanotechnology. You put 2% time on cloud. You put few percent on biotechnology, life science and stuff like that. So what happens, without disturbing your bread and butter, you can continue to develop newer and newer specialization. So once we have done initial exercise of capsule research, then we do more intense. Once trend assessment is revalidated, then we put more resources and more investment and then more work. So secondary research starts, still a second phase research, which is also secondary. And after doing that, the most unique thing that we did, no law firm in the world has done that, and that is do primary research. So for example, if we We had no practice, let's say 10 years ago, on pharma life science in 2001, right? Nothing. I was scheduled to be in World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. You know that day, correct? Everything was around e-commerce, .com and stuff like that. Suddenly everything came to a standstill, flat, nothing. Now we have opened office in 2000 in Silicon Valley. You know how expensive it is? You know, rentals were like $15 a square foot. Okay, about 750 rupees a square foot per month. You know, it was going crazy those days. We had locked in our rentals for 5 years, so now you can't get away from that because you have to pay damages. And, you know, so those kind of situations. Now, within 1 year after setting up an office, you have huge liability sitting in. But what we did, on September 11th, I was supposed to be in World Trade Center with my colleague, Vaibhav. And on a previous day, I was at McKinsey office and I was told the meeting has moved to Chicago. So somehow 10th September night, I went to Chicago, and I went to Chicago. Next morning, I heard this has happened. 4 days, nothing. We are just stuck there. So we thought, what do we do? No, we invested so much. We have to do something about it. Immediately, we started thinking, forget about whatever has happened. Let's forget about all the problems that we have in front of us. But what else we can do? Then thinking 2-3 days, because nothing was happening, so only thinking could happen. And we thought next thing will be security issues. Because World Trade Center created a lot of security. How are you going to manage security? Usual cards and other ones will not work because anybody can use and do the same thing. So biometrics will come in, because biometrics is a little more difficult to overcome. When we looked at biometrics, we thought we have, but this requires knowledge of biomedical and, you know, biology and science, and we had nobody who understood, okay, that subject. So we then thought, okay, let us do one thing. Can we find somebody in the medical profession to become a lawyer? So I had lots of friends, and I saw one of them, young guy, about 12-13 years of experience, one of the top ranking from Baroda University. And I took a chance. His name is Milind, Dr. Milind Antani. And I said, Milind, why don't you do a career change? He was in Operation Theatre. He said, so what? I thought I was joking. So he got a little shocked for a moment, and he said, I'll talk to you afterwards. I spoke with him. Then I explained to him the opportunities for a medical professional in legal. Okay. So you have to convert sometime people. So I spoke with him, and he said, and then he said, when you come back to India, we'll meet. I had 3.5 hours discussions with him in Oberoi Hotel, and I had no paper to write. So it was tissue paper on which I wrote down all my ideas. He has still kept that paper with him. But I said, you don't want to practice law, doesn't matter, because you can't convert somebody overnight, no? So I said, don't do it, but is there anything wrong in doing law? Why don't you start? So he started doing law part-time, and after 2 or 3 years, he really began to enjoy the new age issues, legal issues in pharma, life science, healthcare, and stuff like that, you know. And then he joined us full time. He gave up his, medical. I'm not saying it was good, bad, or worse, but he found some more interesting things to do in legal profession as a medical surgeon. Today he is considered as guru of pharma life science in the world. Every 3rd week he will be flying somewhere to lecture. And of the top 20 pharma companies in the world, we work with at least 11 or 12. You know. So I'm just telling you that once you look at the trend, you have to invest. First 7, 8 years, 9 years, we continue to invest. It is not a short-term thinking. But if you think and commit to yourself, somewhere this space will always come up. Everybody, I'm just giving, so like that I have a number of examples. I can spend whole day in this experience sharing. So all that I'm saying is that if you keep your mind open, it will open up very interesting opportunities, and don't get into ship herd mentality. You are yourself. You can be as powerful as anybody else in the world. There are two ways. Many times when you have small organizations, no, they get inundated by big organizations. Okay? It's a huge 5,000 people, 10,000 people, these, that, global presence and all that thing. Typical mindset is that you get inundated. But remember one thing, that in today's world particularly, even an individual can become global. Individual can become global. Individual can be as powerful as a large organization. It is not about size, it is about positioning. Okay, let me give you one example. You have time, no? But please stop me, because I always enjoy talking to students, and I get so many calls, so I get swayed into talking. But if you're feeling bored, you can even give little hint, I'll understand that, and I'll stop. Okay. There are two ways to become powerful. Many times, because everybody cannot go into big farm and with all those kind of things. So some people think, now my future is there, what will happen and stuff like that. Don't get diffident ever, I would suggest. Two ways to become powerful. One, to become bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? Like an elephant. Okay? And anyone who comes your way, you can trash and kill competition and stuff like that. Other way is to become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, like an atom. What is more powerful? Elephant or an atom? So even as an individual, if you carve out your niche, look at my friend Harish Salve, right? One single person, very inspirational, right? All of us know, I appeared with him in Supreme Court in several cases, and we are good friends. Now, look at whose brand equity is bigger? Big Four or anybody else, or Harish Salve? Palkhiwala, even a better example. Okay, whose brand equity was better? Whose per person revenue, okay, is better? Okay, whose profitability is better? Take any standard. Okay, so idea is that you can become as powerful as any other large organization, irrespective of your size. It is not about size, it is about position. You must know your strengths, weaknesses, and based on that, figure out what you're good at. And more importantly, what kind of work you really enjoy. Just don't go because Harish Salve gets X amount of money and therefore I want to become a tax lawyer, Nishith Desai gets so and so, and it just happens over a period of time. If you enjoy your work, if you just simply go for money, you're going to ruin your career. 9 out of 10 times. Of course, one will succeed because somebody will always gamble. And that's what I really found. 10 years ago, 10 years, 9 years ago, everyone wants to do only capital market. I said, at least learn something else. He said, no, I'm not interested in doing anything else. I'm very focused. I want to be only doing this. So we have to reject so many people, top ranking students. But today I find they are in trouble. So don't get into that mindset. Yes, you need to have focus, no doubt about it. But find your own niche. And as I mentioned, every non-glamorous area could also become glamorous someday. Power sector, if I tell you 20, 30 years ago, if somebody told you to specialize in power sector, oh, smoke is coming out of chimney and whole environment, who wants to go into power sector, right? Suddenly, all this project finance comes, everybody wants to specialize power. Again, on, off, on again, off again. Now again that has slowed down. People don't want to get into project finance much because projects are not happening. Government policies are such that everything is delayed and never happening. So, what I'm again trying to emphasize is that look at things more pragmatically. Look at a small bouquet of flower. Just don't be sticky on one particular thing. So that's how you will. So expectation of The profession, first, profession expects you to be professional. If you do that, that itself is the most important thing. Number two, that try to develop one or two focus area, bearing in mind your specialty, and learn other things. Third, be ready to change. Okay, something is not working out. Yeah, you continue focus on that. Don't if it is really of interest to you, but look at something else also. Okay. Third, do not lose your integrity. Okay. Fourth, learn business also. So only knowing law is not good enough. You have to know the business of a client. So that will be the expectation of the, if you call it industry, if you want to call legal industry, where industry and profession, they work together. What would they expect? They expect that you know their business better. If it's a hotel project or if it's a chemical project, then you must know what really is important. If you are in a mining business, as I mentioned, today, what is the biggest issue in mining? Apart from environment, human rights. You see South Africa so much. You know how gold mine, the biggest gold mine, if you have heard, the tunnel, if you go down, how long is it? 4 kilometers long, you go inside. The conditions of human being is every few months some people die. So they are most concerned about human rights issue. It's gold mine. 44 kilometers down, just imagine, human being has to go down. Of course, there are the cabins and other things, but and that creates a lot of issues. Today, you see all the films recently, what is it, Gang of Wasseypur and all that thing. Yeah, you have opportunity to produce film, okay? Because law is just not about, practicing law, but applying law as well. You can apply law in many ways. Like, again, a very interesting story. About 10, 15 years ago, if you see Bollywood, okay, what do you call it? Film industry. We were nowhere in the film industry. What happened? There were a lot of guns, or the buys. All funding was happening, and industry was completely driven by mafia. I'm sure some of you may or may not know that, but that was kind of very, very sad situation. Now, we were looking at different trends, and we thought this is one area where we need to really look at. And then we thought, let us do some research. Why this mafia element? Okay, we studied the whole space. We did comparative study of business, law, and taxation in the entertainment industry. In the process, we did not only secondary studies, but also primary studies. So we had to go and interview actors, actresses. It's fun, right? Not only in India, but also in Hollywood. So, and after that we found that the reason why people are not getting funding is because film is not regarded as industry. And because it is not industry, banks cannot finance. So small change we needed to make. The whole emphasis was that how can we change this industry? Now, next thing, the discipline that needs to come in film industry is finance. 90% of Indian films do not return money to the investors. 90 to 95% of the films in Hollywood returns their investment to them. It is easier for you, if you have more money, I'm sure you have lots of money. So if you want to invest in film industry, it's easier to make investment in a Hollywood film than in a Bollywood film. Even though we have creativity, everything, but the financial discipline and some other things. But there's a separate issue, but we could change the industry. So have that passion to change the face of the industry. That will again drive you. Take some leadership. Any area you take. I'm just not... So like that, you keep on developing newer and newer areas. You can contribute a lot. And one of the passion I have is to find out newer niches, take it to a certain successful level, then a lot of other people would want to come. Because you become a torchbearer, which is a good thing. Because when more people come in, industry gets more organized and stuff like that. So So from one area to another to third, that has become now kind of a process for us. But in your case, even if you take one or two areas, just go deep into that. Really, there's a lot to do. So, I can again go on and on, but you can add a lot of fun. As I said, in media industry, we got a lot of fun because you meet people and celebrities, and sometimes they don't pay fees. It's okay, but it's fun, right? And as I mentioned that it's very important that don't be taken over by external factors. Have confidence within you. Another last point I will make is that try to be known for one thing. Okay, what is in a marketing guru, Al Rice? He's one of the topmost marketing guru in the world. He says that if you want to be successful, just develop one strong attribute, something for which you should be known, whether small, big is different. Once you are successful in one particular thing, people will accept you in other areas. Okay? And that one attribute will allow you to even survive faster. Because you can find in a whole big balloon, you have a small needle, you can take all the air out. So if you develop that sharp understanding of one particular thing, there are hundreds of them around the world and the profession. Just focus on one or two things, very needle sharp focus, a laser sharp focus you develop. Then you will become known for that. Once you are known for that, client will begin to trust you for more things as well. And that is the way to develop. Very interesting case Al Rice gives of car called Volvo. I do not know how many of you heard of that Volvo, right? Now, if in Europe, in the US, when Volvo was being sold, it had a very bad shape, not good seats. It was okay. But one single reason why people went for Volvo, what? Safety. It was like a tank. So that one single attribute was a great attribute where they opened up the market. Everything else was bad, as they say. But over a period of time, of course, now they have improved the shape and other things, but they were known for safety. Today also, when Volvo comes, in your mind, what comes out is safety. Same way in the profession, once you become known for something, like Mr. Palkhiwala, right? Maybe he started as a tax lawyer, but once he was so successful tax lawyer, then he became successful as a constitutional lawyer. Then he became, people started recognizing him for anything. In law, he was the final word. Because ultimately, law is nothing else but common sense, except sometime in taxes. But other, so because there are all fictions in tax, so many artificial deeming provisions. But generally, law and common sense has to go a lot together. And I think I'll close with this. Have a philosophical approach to life. Be a lateral thinker. Okay. I speak a lot in management schools on strategies. Somehow or the other, I'm not a management graduate, and I'm what you call Gujarati Anguthacha, right? So, but somehow or the other, people invite, and they all start teaching strategies. And I said that you can't start straight away into strategy. First is philosophy. From philosophy emerges vision, mission, goals, strategy, and then structures. So structure follows strategy, strategy doesn't follow structure. What is called form follows function, function doesn't follow. If you want, in architectural language, that's what they say, that you want to know what you want. You want a house, or you want an office, or you want a campus, or what? First, you need to know function. Then you can say how to design that particular thing. Same way, structure follows strategy. But before strategy, you need, and what is strategy? Whether personal strategy or organizational strategy is all about choices. Constantly you have to make choices, right? One definition of strategy is it's all about choices. You go into this area or that area and something like that. If I tell him there's a great opportunity in a meat business, okay? Great, because why don't you set up a slaughterhouse in Gujarat, right? Or somewhere else. Gujarat does not permit. Would you go and do it? Why? Because your philosophy, whatever money, I'm not, this is not something my thing, right? So, philosophy and mathematics, because philosophy allows you to make choices. It's all choices, right? So, he can do, he wants to, he has enough money, and a lot of slaughterhouses are available in the US if you want to get into one. But, you won't do it, because philosophy allows you to make choices. In life, most of our decisions are made by philosophy. So philosophy, if your philosophical base is clear, your choices will be that much clear. And I often say that philosophy and mathematics are nearly identical, or at least similar if not identical. So if your mathematical base is very clear, you can say 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Absolutely clear, no confusion. Right? Same way your philosophical base is clear, your choices will be that much clear. So go by your philosophy, and that will help you a lot. Of course, you will look at all other things, but starting point is philosophy. So, as I mentioned earlier, that don't get into shepherd mentality, because people have to go in this and therefore that. Think yourself. Yeah, you may take into account all the information, all the factors. So from philosophy, what will happen is that it will give you a confidence to make a decision. Because what's going to happen when you go and ask for an advice, or you come to me, I will give you one advice, she will give you another advice, you will be confused. Yeah, you take everybody's input, but ultimately decide for yourself. And be ready. Somebody will say, look here, I told you to do so. Okay? You did not do it, so you failed. So be prepared for failure also. Okay? No problem. But bear in mind that if you fail, the next round you can win as well. That is number one. So expectation is that have a clear mindset and be yourself. Just don't try to imitate somebody. Yeah, inspirational is one thing, but inspirational is to create your own identity. So that would be first advice. Second advice I would give you is that, when you fail, learn lessons from them and move on to the other one. So if you fail on one thing, try to be ready for something else as well. That is how you will really sustain your ability to do newer things. And if you succeed in one of them, it's good. So those are kind of things. So once again, basically, there are so many opportunities, thousands of opportunities, so many different areas of practice. Try to look out for those areas and see where you can fit in well. Industry needs your knowledge, your specialization. Specialization will often get you a little more fees also, but you don't get 10 clients. Instead of that, you get one in a month. But so what? But you will enjoy it. Again, I'm not talking from money perspective. I'm talking that you have to find your own space somewhere. And when you think broader, you will find it. If you think narrower, then you will only find all the crowds going in one direction. And I think those are some of the things I would say, and I've been going on and on. I didn't look at my watch even though I wear two of them. But it has been such a great pleasure speaking to you all. I'll be delighted to take any question, anything that you have to ask. And if you want to send me a mail, I'm always available. My name is Nishith. You know that? Okay. So Nishith at nishithdesai.com. But feel free to email. I enjoy talking to students. I love, because we are the trustees of your future. So whatever 1 cent contribution we can make to your career, to your progress, always welcome. And thank you so much.